And again, with music, which is a really, really difficult career path to embark upon. There's no formula for success. It's like you first, obviously it's your music number one, but then dealing with all of the difficulties of the industry is something that a lot of people won't survive, simply put, no matter how great your music is.
Hello and welcome to the Working From Home podcast with your host, me, Nelson Jordan. Thanks for joining us today. Today I'm delighted to have Farah Nanji, who is a DJ, journalist, TEDx speaker, founder of Regents Racing, which is a business that explores leadership lessons from F1, and the host of the producer of the Mission Makers podcast. As a teenager, she was diagnosed with dyspraxia, a developmental coordination disorder that affects 5% of the world's population, but ended up operating in two industries that rely heavily on motor coordination, music and motorsport. As a DJ and music producer, she has played for some of the biggest brands around the world, from the United Nations to Pacha Destino in Ibiza, and many of her projects have been featured on Channel 4, RTL and the BBC. Farah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Nelson.
Well, that is quite an accomplishment list at such an early age. So I guess tell me about the first thing that comes to mind. I think for me is like the DJing seems very, very out there. So let's start there.
Yeah, that is definitely quite exciting and something I really miss right now with the lockdown. And it's been about 8 months now of not really playing music to an audience. Obviously a bit of live streaming and stuff, but it's not really the same. I fell in love with music. I was lucky to grow up in the UK in London. And obviously we have a very strong music scene, but also a very strong electronic music scene. So I was exposed to the sort of techno in the 90s. And even before I could go out, I was like a member of Fabric. And I remember the reason I got a membership there was like £20 a year, but you would get like all these CDs, like compilation CDs from all these artists. And so when I did eventually go into a club, I will admit it was a bit, it was about around the age of 15. So, it wasn't the legal limit, but I do remember just hearing something on such an amazing sound system, which particularly with Fabric, it's kind of, you've got the sound system on the actual floor itself, as well as, but above. So it's like this whole kind of mind body experience. And I just like the power of a kick drum. It just completely blew my mind. And I kind of knew from then on that I really wanted to not just experience music, but I wanted to be a part of people that were showcasing this to the world and transforming people's lives through music. Because also just being on a dance floor that in that moment, I'd come from quite a the school that I was going to was very close-minded, and you kind of go to a dance hall where there's everyone is completely welcome, and people are just completely free. So I guess I started just pursuing it professionally from around the age of 18. But between the age of 15 to 18, two of my best friends were DJs, so I kind of observed their environment for 3 years, and I really saw what they were doing and the craft that they had of mixing and reading a room and kind of feeding off the energy and in a different way, sort of transcending it. And then, I went to I actually went to DJ school in my gap year before I went to university. And I tried to learn it, sort of that way. And I actually realized afterwards that it can teach you a few things, for sure, the skill set and the fundamentals. But really, once you have that, under lock and key, it's really the fundamental skill is being able to read a room and, the music that you showcase that can sort of, change that environment. So, and then I've been doing it now. It's been, about 10 years. As you sort of mentioned in the intro, I've been really lucky to have a pretty global career, played for some amazing brands and, yeah, and it's been amazing to see dance music in literally every corner of the globe, particularly as I think Swedish House Mafia, when their sound took over the world, I think it really kind of opened the doors for other types of electronic music to have an opportunity to be in other countries and, yeah, kind of create like an ecosystem and a business model, really.
Mm-hmm. Where have you found, of all the places that you've played, kind of the most different in terms of audience response or just general vibe or what they're into?
I think Kenya for sure was like one of the places where I've just been like absolutely mind blown. It may not be the typical thing that you think about when you think about like electronic music, right? So I think for that reason, it's surprisingly amazing. People are just so like the warmness of like Kenyan people is really incredible. Like they're really warm and kind spirited people.
Mm-hmm.
They love music. They love tribal percussion. And they just go crazy for it. So, and then of course, like, the backdrop and the scenery and all that stuff is pretty cool as well.
Yeah, I'm sure that didn't hurt.
Yeah, definitely not.
No, amazing. So I didn't even know there was such a thing as DJ school.
Yeah, it's existed for a while, to be honest. And actually, now on the music GCSE curriculum, DJing and music production is going to be 40% of the grade.
Wow.
At music GCSE. So the way that we're consuming music obviously has changed. And like, you and I can easily go on an app and just sort of download, on the iTunes store and just download a DJ app. And it will be, you could get one for free and you could do the basic, kind of things, right? So there is a very solid way of learning it, to be honest, and a quite structured approach to it, particularly because with technology, there are so many different ways of playing now as well. So, and different genres have very different ways of the skill set. So like if you were in hip hop, like, scratching would be something that would obviously be quite a big skill set that you'd need to have. So yeah, it's pretty cool that you can go to like kind of schools and they're everywhere. I mean, you can get them in LA, New York, Berlin, London, Ibiza. I mean, all the kind of hotspots for music do have these DJ schools.
Amazing. So how have you found kind of things changed since COVID? You mentioned an uptick in streaming and things like that.
It's been hard because it was my primary sort of source of income. And that just got taken away, pretty much. I mean, I'm still owed a little bit of money here and there from gigs I did, just towards the end. And that's always been one of the hardest things about the music industry as well, is like, you don't get paid on time. Like you do have to kind of chase things. You don't get paid ahead of, like, I mean, some people will, but if you're, up and coming, it's not, you're not going to get the fee in advance and all that stuff. So I found it tough because, there's obviously a huge transition. And then the government as well, like saying that, we should just retrain for other jobs, and just forget about like this being a viable profession. It's a really sad thing to hear the government say because also like, in the last decade, 50% of clubs have shut down in the UK as well. So the government support in general for this industry hasn't been, overwhelmingly supportive. And it almost feels like, well, now that there's this like pandemic, it's like an opportunity for them to kind of like close down more clubs and replace it with, real estate buildings and all of those things. But in some ways, like what it has, I mean, I'm one of those people that will find a way to innovate and push through hard times, like, and so I even though, the opportunity to play isn't there, like, of course, on the positive sides of things, like, it's given me a huge chance to like rest from traveling, which I've noticed has been a huge difference in my sort of sleeping pattern and my diet, like all of those things. It's given me a lot more time to produce music as well, which I wasn't getting a lot of time in the past for. So that's been really nice, and like learn new things. And actually what's been really nice is like a lot of really famous producers have used this time to like put together online courses, and also like live courses with them. So there's like a whole influx of like DJs and producers that are like, you know, the absolute top level, kind of, you know, having access to their production process, which has been really cool. Like I've signed up to like 3 or 4 different producer courses.
Amazing.
So yeah.
No, I think that's great. It's the other thing. Like even the guys at the top of their profession will still have seen their income absolutely slashed, I'm guessing. Especially when a lot of their income, if not all of it, is made from venue attendance, basically, from getting people out live and kind of enjoying the music with them. So that's a big shame, but I'm glad that some people have been able to pivot. I really, really enjoy from learning from those people, not just who are in my profession, because I'm a copywriter. So I also enjoy learning from people that are fiction writers as well, or in that sort of field. So I love like the masterclass, because they do some sessions with Neil Gaiman, who's just really amazing writer that I kind of look up to, but completely, you know, different style. Like he writes stories, you know, for graphic novels and things like that. Whereas I tend to write commercial, direct response, web copy and things. But there's still like a lot of things that you learn. And David Sedaris as well, who's like a fiction writer. Well, he kind of writes from his personal perspective and diary and kind of embellishes it. But so the opportunity to learn from somebody ahead of you and somebody like, I think that is wonderful that technology has enabled that, and that you're still finding a way to kind of use this time as an opportunity. It sucks that we're all in this position, but to try and get something good from it, I think is like a noble endeavor. I just want to switch gears a little bit, I suppose, and kind of talk about how you first got involved, you know, with like F1, with music, and your kind of battles with dyspraxia, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, then I went to this birthday party where a few friends were doing a go-karting thing, and I'd never really experienced karting in itself. Like it's not, motorsport isn't a sport that, you know, you can't just pick up a football and go to the park. It's not very accessible. But I knew I loved cars because my grandfather used to watch F1 religiously on Sundays. So I used to watch that with him, and we used to go on long drives. And like my mum used to say that, you know, to get me to sleep as a child, they would just have to take me for like really long drives, and all these things. So yeah, so it was there that I really experienced go-karting, and my love for sort of the sport really began as a sort of, you know, competitor. Because you put that helmet on and nobody knows who you are, and it's literally just you in the car, and there's this intense level of focus that you have to get to whilst managing a hell of a lot of adrenaline, and that focus, you know, is very repetitive because you're going around 30 to 50 laps, whatever it is. And then so from that moment, I just knew I loved it. I wanted to just like be a part of the sport in whatever way I could. It seemed like a really, really difficult mountain to climb because there are lots of different formats of motorsport and you need a hell of a lot of money. But karting is one of the best ways to kind of start. So I started doing a bit of karting, and then a couple of years later, I got diagnosed with dyspraxia, and that was when it all became very like, well, what am I going to do? Because I knew I loved it and I was doing relatively well, you know, and so it didn't feel like, to me, I didn't quite understand, like, how could I have a motor coordination delay, but then know how to like drive well? Like that, like shouldn't be, you know, possible. But I realized like probably what it was like I was getting to a point and I would stall and I wouldn't be able to advance to the next part, because probably that was the disconnect, you know. And it is something that took a long time to kind of like by doing it a lot was kind of how I learned more and more. But that, I guess that's, the same for anything really. But yeah, so got diagnosed with dyspraxia. My teachers kind of, they just thought like, how can there be this huge discrepancy between getting really good grades in like English and history and stuff like that, but then science and maths, like, getting D's, which is just not acceptable for a school like that. And so, yeah, it was kind of like, see if you can get extra time to help you out in any way, shape or form. And that's when I spent a day with an educational psychologist, and she did all these tests, and some of them were really basic tests, like drawing a straight line several times. But when you see a dyspraxic person can't necessarily draw a straight line that well, especially several times. So things like that. And then she said to me, you've got this thing. And like, yeah, I'd never heard of it before. I didn't know it existed. A lot of people heard of dyslexia. A lot of people haven't heard of dyspraxia. And there wasn't much support after that. It was just like, well, this is what you have, and we'll give you extra time. You should use a laptop in your exams because your handwriting becomes quite illegible after a certain period time. And that was kind of it. And I have to say, like, I didn't really think about it for a long. I was almost embarrassed to have it. It was just like whatever. And it was actually when I was doing this TED talk 2 years ago that I actually started doing a lot of research into it and finding out a lot more. And it actually really helped me, like, with what I have and understanding it in a deeper way. So I guess for me it was like, look, I know I'm passionate about music and motorsport. I know that I'm in some shape or form I'm good at it for whatever reason. I understand it, and okay, I'm not going to go out there and be the next F1 driver, but I can still be in the sport and I can still innovate and I can find different ways to be part of the sport. Music is a little different, but it's kind of the fact that, like, I have this ability to read a room and to just play amazing music and be kind of have the opportunity to travel with the music and to showcase this sound.
Mm-hmm. So within F1, and I thought it was so funny when you mentioned about watching it with your grandpa, because the moment you did that, and maybe it was because we were also talking about like the impact of music, I just had that is it like The Chain by Fleetwood Mac come on, that they used to bom ba ba bom ba 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 ba. I just had that instantly, like, in my head. So I was like, yeah, that's funny that there's a link between what you're talking about, like the music and that, and then the also the other thing I was thinking about is the match of the day theme tune through the other football thing. Anyway, don't want to get too off topic, but I just found that quite funny personally. So no, it's fantastic that you managed to kind of find a way to become involved, because I think so many times it happens where there's kind of like a setback and there's not necessarily like an easy way to remain involved. When I was kind of in my early 20s, I had a nasty neck injury when I was playing rugby, and basically just meant that, well, for a long time I had to learn how to rewalk and just kind of get myself doing yoga and rehab and physio sessions and that sort of stuff. And that was it for me in rugby. And I kind of wish somebody had given me the path, I suppose, to remain involved. I'm actually looking at the moment, kind of once COVID is not necessarily gone, but things open up again, to become involved with the coaching side of it. Like, for the longest time, I didn't, if I'm being honest, want that much to do with rugby, because every time I watched it, I wanted to play it, and I knew I couldn't because I was going to risk concussion or another neck injury. But now I think I'm ready to get back into that in that capacity and try and kind of enjoy the sport from a different angle. So I'm really pleased that you managed to find something there. I think for too many people, it's the case that doesn't exist, either because like a lack of resources or a lack of path, or just a lack of knowledge that like there is a way to be involved, that there is a path forward. What do you think about that?
100%. I think it's so true. And particularly with sports as well, where you can just take one injury and that's it. Your whole life's dedication to a particular sport is like completely taken away. And then, I can totally see that unless you're playing, it's like, you don't want to be in it anymore because that was where you really thrived and got your fulfillment from. But yeah, I think later on, coming back to it and coaching and enabling others, and the sports need that. They need those people who dedicated that time. And I think for me particularly, like the more I got into seeing how difficult it was to, kind of be in motorsport, not just F1, but like even other sort of types of motorsport, and how it wasn't just about, okay, like, one part is the dyspraxia, but the other stuff is like, the fact that just females in motorsport is really underrepresented. And it's just an area where, particularly in my time, there really wasn't that much happening at that point. Even getting a job in F1, like there wasn't, a jobs career section on most of these team sites, and that's like the simple fundamental stuff. Now, of course, today, it's a completely different landscape. But it's still not. It's still got a really long way to go before we see like that first driver who's female in Formula One. So and I find that now I'm because you're still involved with it, you still do get to do things like drive, and you do still get to like experience it. It's just not going to be at that intensity. But you learn so much more, and it's actually helped me with so many different other areas of my life too. And that's kind of why I started this business that was all around the leadership lessons from the sport, because I think there's so many, and particularly with sports, you're at a very young age and you have to navigate all of these things, and you do like kind of tend to become a bit more mature than your peers because you're living your life in a very different intense and then different pressure as well. So observing some of that millennial leadership is very interesting. So yeah, I completely agree with everything that you say. And hopefully you'll be back after this kind of starts winding down a little bit.
Yeah, I'd love to find a way of becoming involved in a way that I enjoy, that doesn't make me desperate to play again and remind me of what I can't do. But within because I want to talk about you and not too much about me. Everyone will be sick of hearing my voice. But have you noticed kind of an increase in let's talk about the drivers for a second, in terms of female drivers in F2 and F3? Are the people kind of making their way up the ranks or not so much yet?
It's still, there are a few. It's like a handful, not more than like a seventh of the grid, let's say. But like there have been a few very key people in different parts of the sport that have helped turn that wheel. So like Claire Williams, she was the former team principal of Williams, and one of her kind of one of the changes that she made was like ensuring that a certain amount of the working force of Williams was female, had females in it, which was really important because not a lot of teams were also, it was really super male dominated. And then she also kind of gave Susie Williams the seat, the developmental seat as Williams' developmental driver. So that was a huge step forward as well. And then, in the ranks, there are definitely a few that are sort of there, and they're getting a lot of spotlight. And particularly there was this series that started a couple of years ago called the W Series, which is basically just a female-led series. And it's actually really great because you don't have to pay for your seat. So if you're good enough, you could get in, and then there's a lot of exposure that's happening as a result of that series. And also a few of the heavyweights like David Coulthard, they're kind of involved in that series as well, which is amazing. You need that. So I think now more and more people are like, come on guys, like we look what century we live in. I mean, how is motorsport one of the last sports to have that equalized playing field? So people are like relentlessly sort of trying to turn the wheel, but it's unfortunately, it's like one thing is women, but then the other part is just the insane amount of money you need to race. It's absurd. I mean, going from karting and then going into a single seater around the age of like 14, 15, we're talking like at least £100,000 a season And so that's a really insane level, and it could just easily go up into the millions. And even people who are in F1 now, some of those drivers are there because they bring money into the team. And when we think, a team like Mercedes can spend, 200 million, that's nuts, right? And you're not really going to see that money come back either. It's completely a sunk. You don't invest in F1 to make money at all. So yeah, it's a difficult one. So hopefully, let's see where it goes. I think the more careers that open up, not just as a driver but on other parts, then things will change.
I'm hoping, because things like engineering are traditionally very male dominated, and obviously like the engineering teams within F1 are hugely important. So I'd like to think that, as well as the drivers, the engineering is perhaps a more accessible way for women to get into it, because at the end of the day, there's a certain number of spots, available spots in F1 in particular. And, if you're talking, I don't know, I think it's two drivers per team in terms of the top level. So you're fighting for even the top men are fighting for very limited spots. I think hopefully we'll see women competing for those spots and winning them sometime soon. I think engineering as well, just in the nature of there are more engineering spots available, more ways to be involved in a team. It goes back to that, trying to find a way to be involved in something you love, and finding like the right path to do that. Did you find that anybody was like a particular guide for you on there in terms of a leading light that you found to kind of show you the way?
So I think I just want to go back to what you said, because it's actually really true, because there's only 20 seats, right? That's it. And that's the top. And then there was a really interesting statistic I found a couple of years ago that was that, like, if we know that karting is the grassroots and where like the talent starts getting nurtured, I mean, there are only 8% of karters are female. So then to take it to all the way to the top, right? It's just naturally there's just, that's kind of partly why it hasn't happened. But also there's that huge pressure, because whoever becomes the first, they can't go into a losing team. Like, they have to go into a mid-pack or they really have to enter into a mid-pack, I think. So there's that. Has anyone been a guiding light? I think in the beginning when it was all starting, no, because it wasn't talked about as much. But then as the internet started coming out more, and like YouTube and all these things started becoming developed, that's when there was a lot more being a lot more was happening. So you could look at like keynote discussions quite easily online. Susie Williams, again, she was really one of the people that really became a guiding light in that, because she talked openly quite a lot about her path and how like what she's faced and the challenges and the way she's done it. But also now, like, it's a bit too late for me to kind of think that I'm going to get in that seat, but I'm very involved with her initiative, Dare to Be Different, which was it's an amazing organization. It's actually just got recently taken over by the FIA, which is the governing body of motorsport. So Susie Williams, so her initiative, Dare to Be Different, which was recently acquired by the FIA, which is the governing body of motorsport. It's amazing what she's done, because as you mentioned about the engineering and stuff, again, that also kind of comes back to starting that interest from, again, sort of youngish age, knowing the right subjects to take for your A-levels, going to the right university, etc. And what she's done has been phenomenal, because she's basically, I think she's been exposed to about 33,000 school children. And so what she does is, like, she'll go to a school, she'll get her sort of a company to go to a school across the UK, and they will bring in sort of a team principal, or they'll bring in a female engineer or somebody who is in charge of like making Lewis Hamilton's steering wheel, and they'll bring the steering wheel, and they'll have this huge like STEM activity day, which is amazing. And like, probably maybe only 10% of the girls there will be interested and go on and, kind of take it on. But it's a huge seed for change. And like, I don't know about you, but we definitely didn't ever have that kind of, those types of people coming in to talk about careers, because the first thing is like even the seed getting planted that you can do this, and like, F1 is drivers, but it's also like 800 different other roles, within the sport. So I think she's amazing, in terms of what she's done, and also, the organization, it doesn't just apply to just young females. It's also a whole community of women, even at any age, who are welcome to go to a Dare to Be Different event when they have them. And you could be at a Williams F1 factory hearing a female engineer talk about how she did it. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that sort of grassroots encouragement is so important, because unless you're exposed to those sort of things, you don't know they exist. Like, you don't have a clue. You don't have any idea about the opportunities that are available to you. If you basically don't see something on TV or in your family and your friendship group as a kid, you don't really think it exists. So I think that's incredibly important. And it's so nice that they're going into schools and doing that. I think, like with my primary school, they were more likely to just bring a policeman in to tell us to stop acting up. I think that's the level of community involvement we were looking at. So that's really, really nice. I'm kind of getting a sense that what you kind of have seen there from sorry, what was her name again? Something Williams.
Susie Williams.
Susie Williams. I do apologize. Sorry. What you've seen from her, that has that kind of led on to what you're doing with Mission Makers at all?
She would be somebody I would love to get on the show for sure, because she's obviously somebody who's on a serious mission to innovate in the field. But I think Mission Makers is more of an amalgamation of all the sort of inspiring people in those two industries that I'm involved with, and kind of getting to showcase their stories and the misconceptions, because obviously that is something that really needs to get talked about, because it's not all what it looks like on paper at all, right? So yeah, that's the scoop on that one.
So tell us more about Mission Makers in general. Like, what is it really for? What are you looking to achieve? What sort of learnings have you got already, having started it recently?
Yeah, definitely. So it really is about diving deeper into that mindset of misconceptions, but also how to, like, how do you develop that successful mentality? And so, yes, it's different because it focuses on two completely different things, which is music and motorsport. And then as a sort of third category, we've just got business in general. But like, for example, with motorsports, we could have somebody talking about decoding human performance, and he could be a mental resilience coach for a race car driver. And like most sports, really 80 to 90% of success in motorsport comes from your mental state. Because again, performing at that level, doing it repetitively, not losing it for even a second, while you have people talking to you in your helmet, you're traveling around the world. It's relentless. You've got this media scrutiny that's absolutely, unbelievable. It's a dog eat dog world out there, and it's tough. So hearing from that guy, which is kind of like really interesting, because he doesn't say anything that is very specific to motorsport. Like, you could listen to that episode and think, yeah, I could adopt those habits 100%. Like, and it's the small steps. So that's kind of, with each episode, it's like sharing someone's story and thinking about a specific sort of theme or takeaway that we want to empower our listeners with. We've just launched a podcast, so we kind of strategized who would be our target audience, but obviously that will change over time. But like, particularly some of the people that we want to inspire with it are students, because I think having access to that level of conversation, at that age, with industry leaders is not something they may be getting in their day-to-day life. So just kind of like having that inspiration, and particularly now when like the whole educational system and the whole, like, the market for jobs is going to be so tough with COVID. We hope that it will help people in some shape or form and empower them. And again, with music, which is a really, really difficult career path to embark upon. There's no formula for success. It's like you first, obviously it's your music, number one, but then dealing with all of the difficulties of the industry is something that a lot of people won't survive, simply put, no matter how great your music is. So some of those things, like the next episode coming out, we focus heavily on egoism in the music industry and burnout culture, and again, those things, they're relatable to anyone, not just somebody who's in music, because we may all have to navigate a working environment where we have to manage egos, or there's politics at play, and we have to read energy, and so yeah, just hearing those stories in a different lens, hopefully will have an impact to the people that listen to it.
I think so. I think that's definitely going to be the case. I mean, when you were saying that, I was thinking in my head about a guy called Elliot Rowe. He is a mindset and performance coach who used to, I think he probably still does, take on a lot of different clients from very diverse industries, but these days focuses on poker players. Obviously, the mental game is incredibly important when you're talking about making decisions with money, as all poker players do. And there's so many different things that become involved. And one of the kind of better aspects of technology is this kind of democratization of information, this increase of access to people. I mean, working with somebody like Elliot on a one-to-one basis is going to cost you a hell of a lot of money, but you can access, through software, through video platforms, through courses and things like that, you can access this guy's incredible knowledge. And I think that's very similar to kind of what you're talking about there. And at least kind of from an F1 perspective, there's so many things that get shared that are also relevant in other aspects of life. You just happen to be using that as kind of the focus point. And then like with music as well, it's really interesting that how different they are, right? Because you could probably break down motorsport into a series of things that, say, for example, you're a driver. You could probably break that down into a series of things that you have to improve upon. So, I don't know, like angles and speed going into turns, forever. I'm basically going to show my ignorance now of motorsport, and you'll be like, that's not a thing, but that's fine. But you could break down all of these skills into like their component parts theoretically. Whereas music, I guess you could try and do something similar, but it just becomes far more subjective. Like the objective goal as a driver in F1 is very much clear from the start. It's to finish ahead of everybody else for this one particular race, and then you build on races for a season and things like that. And as an engineer, you have a very specific goal, right? Whatever kind of engine part that you're in charge of, you're supposed to make more efficient, whether that's in terms of like the energy that it takes or the weight of it or whatever. But like with music, where do you kind of even start with something that subjective? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do, yeah. It's really interesting. It's actually really interesting what you say, because it's true. Like F1 and motorsport is performance obsessive, and it's all about finding a nanosecond to shave off. And it's and as you say, there are thousands of data points which will literally get read and picked up on. But there's also almost this very interesting culture of like, well, if you don't fail, if you don't push it to its limit, you won't know that you can get to that performance state. Whereas with music, obviously, you don't want to break, and you need to push yourself to a limit, but you need to know where the boundaries are. I think on a personal level, how is it translated to music? Okay, music is objective or whatever, and people will always, what works for someone will not be nice for someone else, which is fine. But obviously, you need to have confidence in what you play. You need to have enough people that that you can kind of believe play that like your music, and you kind of, and there's a market for it. Ultimately, there is a space. And I think one of the things that I do see some musicians, not all of them, but is that like people just think, well, I'm just going to play my music and I'm just going to be as good as I can, and that's my job. I shouldn't do anything else. But in reality, and particularly in today's world, when you're fighting against everyone else to get heard, I think, you need to take accountability for the fact that, like, yes, being a musician is a huge part, is the core of it, but around it is like everything else, which is in your control. Whether it's like you don't have a good website, and let's say you don't have the money, well, you can easily go and learn something, or you can go on Wix and build it. It's not that difficult. It's how all of the other areas, social media, all of those things that you really have to think about, and it is in your control, and there are benchmarks, and there are ways to measure that performance. But, like, obviously there has to be a really fine balance between your creativity and not losing that. And also I think it comes back to, again, what do you want? Because if you want to be that person who becomes like Swedish House Mafia, then for sure there you can put metrics in place, and it's always about more and more and more. Whereas, like, if you're more underground, it's more about the quality of the of the gig and the audience. And but it's good to quantify it sometimes, just to sort of think, I'll be happy with this, and then if I'm getting dangerously close, like, I'll know how to pull back, or or even, like, sometimes for your own, I think, health. And I think Avicii was sadly an example of it, was like just doing way too much because people around him was pressurizing him too. And if you think you've got 52 weeks in a year, you shouldn't be playing for 50 of those weeks. You need to know how much is going to work for you and your body, and you need to take that step away and be comfortable to sort of say no, or like request it in a different next year, or whatever it is for your own self. Because obviously if you want to be around for the long haul, then you need to play the long game.
Sure.
And I also think that with music as well, I think the other part of it is that it is a really hedonistic environment, and of course you don't see that in F1, like on that sort of scale.
Only with kind of the champagne popping at the end.
Yeah, exactly. You've got the champagne podium, and I'm sure that the teams, of course, they love to celebrate when they win and everything, but it's like they get back to the grind as soon as they do. Whereas with music, something I've definitely found quite challenging is, like, I genuinely know that I've had to deal with, like, people on a professional basis who may be taking substances, and it could be like 11 in the morning, and you're just like, what that's not professional. You don't go to work doing that. And some people don't see it as work, like they don't have those professional boundaries, because they just think, well, that's what this industry is, and it's not. Because the people who actually do end up really succeeding are the ones who have a very, very good balance between those things and a discipline.
Within I'm just curious, because we mentioned it within motorsport, but within music, do you see within the type of music specialisms that you're interested in, like dance music and things like that, do you see more kind of a male female split?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's still underrepresented. I think it's like in the top 100 DJs, there's hardly any DJs there like who are female and stuff. Not even 10% or anything. So there is a split, but it's not what it used to be, and it's not as rare as a female in motorsport in a way. But the split is still there, and it still needs to be equalized. And again, there are some really good collectives these days coming together to try and champion those things. And I think that the pay gap, unfortunately, is still a little bit unequal in terms of female male performances, the performance fees. Sorry.
No, that's really interesting. I'm just wondering, it's like for some things, like within sports, there's always been the argument that I don't want to get too deep into this, but that I've always heard the argument, like, played with tennis, for example, on the difference of fees and the difference of length of games and things like that, between men and female, and other things within sports, about why men and women, whether or not you believe these things, I'm just kind of putting them out there, whether men and women should compete against each other and things like that. Music, though, strikes me as something that there should be no possible reason to have that kind of mainly male environment, right?
Yeah, I agree. There really shouldn't be any reasons for it. I suppose that maybe sometimes some of it's, what people perceive DJs as is quite a rock star lifestyle and all that stuff. But there should really be no reason for it. Like, if anything, sometimes females have a different ability of reading energy as well, because there's a more feminine sort of intuition into it. I'm not saying that one's better than the other, but there is, they shouldn't be alienated from it, because they also can have exceptional skills in it as well. I think that the pay gap is probably something that's less felt, ironically, at the top. I think that when you're at the top and you've got your agent representing you, there's just no way, it's just, that's what it is. And if you want me, that's it. But whereas I think in the more kind of up and coming or starting out and stuff, that's where I think more of the gap is. And again, and that's not even just a gap within genders. That's also a gap between how much someone gets paid who's really famous versus someone who's up and coming. It's a hugely different. It's two completely ends of the spectrum. But in essence, they are doing the same job. They are doing the same amount of hours. It's a similar amount of people in a room. Maybe the ticket prices might be different. But yeah, there's a whole, I don't know. There needs to be more work done on equalizing the field. But now, obviously, with COVID, that's going to be a really difficult thing, because most venues aren't going to survive this pandemic, and some artists also will not be able to continue doing this because of COVID.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's unfortunately the case that we're going to lose, as I think personally is the case for some industries, we're going to lose like a generation of people coming through potentially because of this?
I hope not. I hope not. We won't lose that generation of people coming through. I really hope not. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. Because it all depends that then, how long is it? Will it be before we can get back to a dance floor environment? That's the real question. And some countries are getting back to it a little bit. Like, unsurprisingly, I heard that in China they've been having parties for Halloween, and but particularly parts of Asia, which generally have dealt with the pandemic a bit better, they have been kind of getting back to it. So hopefully, in some parts of the world, we won't lose a generation.
I suppose I'm just worried there that if we don't have the venues to go to, that people just aren't, the people like you and I that have already been exposed to certain types of music will always want to go to gigs and things when things open up. But I can remember going to like my first gig when I was like a young teenager or something, and being like, wow, this is incredible. And that's like one of the ways that I got involved with music, and that kind of only furthered things for me, only made me more excited to go to more and to dig into other types of music. I'm just worried that if those places don't exist, that those experiences on the same level can't be had.
It's going to take a long time. I think, people are there's probably going to be a generation that feels more hesitant to go out, but then at the same time, young people are young people and they want to go out and have a good time. So, and also, the pandemic's affected more older people than young. So there's also kind of that. But there are also, again, hopefully measures that are going to be in place more like you can get rapid testing, and then you should have that as an option, or they let people in, all of those things. But for sure, we're probably going to see more hesitancy with people who want to be in a mosh pit. It's probably not what you want right now.
Yeah, I suppose my concern is less over the hesitancy aspect, because as you said, I think young people in general, especially if they've got a couple of beers in them, and I include myself in that as well, are less likely to be kind of thinking about the consequences of those sort of actions with regards to coronavirus, and more just like, I'm just worried the places where they would have those experiences won't exist. Like, I saw a stat the other day on pubs, and they think that like 40,000, 45,000 pubs in the UK. That's like not really the same as bars to you Americans, but to any Americans that are listening, but hopefully you will know what pubs are. But that's huge. Like, pubs was such a large part of my experience growing up. Like, whether I was there with family, whether I was there with friends, and also within that, like, a lot of the places where I did experience music were pubs. That would have people playing on a Wednesday night and a Friday night.
It's true, and also with London in this instance, the government sort of putting the congestion charge to 24/7 now, pretty much, or every day until 10 p.m. You're literally making it impossible for people. I mean, on the one hand, if you have the ability to come in without taking the tube, surely that's the way you should enter town, because then you're not going into more of a bacteria-filled environment. But then you're disencouraging people, and then it's awful. Like, the government is not doing anywhere near enough to save these people, and pubs have been a huge part of the British culture as well. So to hear that statistic, that is really sad. God knows what. Yeah, it's really tough to say with this country what's going to happen. I mean, you look at places like Berlin, where it's like the other end of the spectrum, like how they fight to preserve their culture, and they have a different, and we've actually, I think we've lost, a lot of creatives to places like Berlin, because it's more welcoming there,
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. So we've talked about all of your different kind of projects and things. And I know it's very, very difficult to say given what we're going through at the moment, but in an ideal world, what does kind of the next year to 2 years look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, like, obviously, playing music as soon as possible would be fantastic. No surprises there. But I think also my shift anyway was, like, I was kind of lucky because I was full-time music for a few years, but like the last 2 years I started a venture in the motorsport industry. So my 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, whatever, was it wasn't music really. So this venture that I'm working on is called Formula Mind, and it's all about taking the leadership lessons from Formula One and motorsport and basically empowering senior management teams with some of those techniques. Mm-hmm. So, of course, the pandemic has sort of like forced us into like thinking, how can it be somewhat of a virtual or blended experience? Mm-hmm. Of course, like the real beauty of it is the face-to-face. But in an ideal world, I'd love for that company to, in the future, become successful. We're not live yet. Like, it's going to be something that, we hopefully seek investment into. I'd love to really, to get that off the ground. I'd love Mission Makers to continue being a success. And more than anything, just like health and all of that stuff is kept well. But that the world is free of this virus. I mean, will we ever be free? God knows. But that we manage to find a way to live and coexist with it, if that's really what happens.
I think that's as good a goal as any of us can have right now. And where can people find you?
Yeah, for sure. So if you want to listen to my music, you can just go on SoundCloud and type in DJ-Ninja, and then it should just come up. And then if you just want to like follow me or whatever, I'm on Instagram at dj.n1nja. And the podcast is obviously on Mission Makers. But those are the three sort of main channels.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed our conversation, and best of luck in the future.
Thanks so much for having me, Nelson. Speak to you soon.
And that's it for today. You've been listening to the Working From Home podcast with me, Nelson Jordan. We've been talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly side of remote work. Thanks so much for listening, and I really hope you've enjoyed the time you've spent with us today. If you'd like to discuss the podcast, you want to make a new friend, or you're interested in working with me on a copywriting or digital marketing project, then visit nelson-jordan.com. That's nelson-jordan.com, where you can also sign up to my newsletter to hear about this podcast and other exciting projects. Until next week, goodbye.